Okay, so I'm sitting here today with Deacon Herbert Meux. The Lord put it on my heart to do a project where it would be focused on the seniors in our church, or the elders in our church. And my goal is to pretty much have a conversation with all of our elder saints inside the church. And today I'm meeting with Deacon Meux. So Deacon Meux, why don't we start out by you telling us a little bit about where you grew up, where you were born, just about your family.
Where I was born in Blytheville, Arkansas, and we was there until I was about 6 or 7 years old, and then we moved to Hayti Heights, Missouri. So actually I grew up in Missouri. Part of my family, and the other part of my brothers and sisters born in Missouri. So I spent my time in Hayti Heights, Missouri. And then I have 3 brothers and 5 sisters. And I remember when we went there, see, in those days, when they was talking about the Holy Ghost, but most of us at that time, we didn't know too much about the Holy Ghost. It was just starting. And so in the town where we moved, Hayti Heights, they didn't have no Church of God in Christ there. They had the Central Baptist Church. So my sister and my mother sent us to Central Baptist Church. And then later on, the pastor, Doc Wright, he started church in his house first, but we still went to the Baptist church because they had the Sunday school, BYPU, and YPWW. And we had great teachers, and you couldn't tell too much difference between the Church of God in Christ or that Baptist church at that time. It was great teachers, and they gave us a good training. And that's kind of where I got started there.
And so how did you get from Arkansas to Fresno? How did that happen?
I got from Arkansas, and when I grew up, and when we come to Fresno, it was about in 1950 or 1951. But see, when I went there, when I go back to Hayti Heights, Missouri, I went to school there, and I finished high school there.
Okay.
And when I finished high school, I was a salutatorian second in my class. And then while I was there, I went up and they took us during the school time. I went up to Jefferson City, Missouri, where they had the university up there, and they took us to go and see how that you would do at the university. And it was a great experience when we were there. So when we come back, my father was a preacher. And so at the time when he was there, he pastored 3 churches. He pastored one in Kaiser, Arkansas, Osceola, Arkansas, and then Steele, Missouri. And so he was on the road all the time. He was mostly gone. And so we would be there. I'd be there with my mother. And so we had a lot of the people. Most of the time when we come here, I didn't know nothing too much about California. Most of the people where I lived, we would go to Chicago or Detroit or like that. But then he had a preacher named Ella Walton, so he came out ahead of him, and he came to California. Said it would be a good place to go to. And he said, well, you get to California, so you would think money was growing on trees. And what he would tell him, say, oh, it's great opportunities. We didn't have the opportunities there. So, but when we got here, we found out that money wasn't growing on trees when we got here. But when it was 1950, 51, and then I remember when we left my town where we left on a 2 o'clock Friday afternoon, and we didn't get to California until 2 o'clock Tuesday the next week. And we had to ride the Greyhound bus all the way from there. And so it was really a really long time. And we come up Route 66. We used to hear about that one on TV. And that's the one we come out there. And then when we come out, they had our Jim Crow laws then. And see, where I come from, we didn't have that type of Jim Crow law in the town I come from in Missouri. or you could ride the bus, you could go into any restaurant and eat. Now the schools are separated, or we had the Central High for the black people, and then the Hayti Heights for the white kids. But when we got on the bus, I didn't want to go the southern route, but they had the floods up on the upper part of the country, so I had to go through there. So when I come through, we had to go through Oklahoma and Texas and all those times. I had seen some, I heard about some of this segregation, but I hadn't met on it like that. And so we got in St. Louis, and we had all of us riding there. They had servicemen was on the bus, and we was all sitting anywhere on the bus. That's the way it did. So we got into Oklahoma, went into Kansas, and then we got into Oklahoma. Well, we sitting there. So when I was on the bus, it was a white fellow was sitting there. So he got out. I didn't move. I didn't go to the back, and so he sat down beside me. And so we went on. We made it on in through Oklahoma. And then when we got into Shamrock, Texas, it was at night. Well, when I got into Shamrock, Texas, and there, I found out what really discrimination was. And when we got on the bus there, well, everybody was sitting together. So when the bus driver got on, he looked up and saw the black and the white and all of us sitting together talking. And he said he looked up in the mirror. He said, "Let me tell you something now." He said, "This is the state of Texas." He said, "Black folks," well, at the time they said probably color or Negroes, "you can't be sitting in here. You Negroes go to the back of this bus, and you white folks come to the front of the bus." And so nobody moved. And we sat there. He said, "Did you hear what I said?" He said, "All the Negroes go to the back, and the white folks come to the front." And nobody still didn't move. So we didn't know. So pretty soon, it shifted gears in that bus. When that man started driving that bus, I thought he was going to kill all of us. I mean, he drove it fast, but nobody moved, And so that was a wide awakening. But then we all talked and still socialized together. So, and then finally, we got to, when we got straight, we got to Santa Rosa, New Mexico. Well, they didn't have this, you could ride and sit the bus anywhere. And they said, "Well, we're there now." So we got to New Mexico, and then we finally got to Flagstaff, Arizona. We stayed in there. Everything went real good. And we had never been to California, and boy, we got up and we saw all the lights and stuff in there. It just looked like he was going to heaven, because I had never seen no palm trees and all that stuff. It was just so beautiful out here. And finally, we got to Fresno that Tuesday at 2:00. And so we was on the bus from that Friday afternoon to Tuesday. Now, I'm telling you, we was tired when we got here. So that's why we got here.
And so that was you and your...
You and one of my sisters, my oldest sister. When I told my mother, see, I wasn't coming to California. I was going to probably, I had kin folks up in Chicago, grandmother, and then in Detroit. And I had been up in Michigan. And so I said, well, I don't know. And then another thing, we didn't grow that much cotton in Missouri, just on the bottom end. So I read in the encyclopedia, so they had cotton all over the place. I said, I don't want to be picking nobody's cotton. And I said, I don't want to go to no California on that. And so my mother said, well, you got to come here and stay with the family. I said, now don't you go up there to Chicago for me. And so my mother talked to me. So then I changed my mind. And I said, well, I'll go with my older sister. We go together. And so she said, well, then you two go. But my mother and my family stayed there. So we come to California first. That's what happened there.
And did your parents ever come? Did she ever come to California? She just stayed back there?
No, she came later. It was about, I would say, we had property back, a couple of houses back there. And so they had to sell the property. Then my father had to go back, for them. And then they came later. I would say they got here about maybe 3 weeks later with my other brothers and sisters there then. Okay. And so that's what happened. And another thing too, I'm gonna say the difference too. And when I was living in the Hayti, Missouri, and when my father was pastoring, he pastored those churches. And so when they have appreciations, well, the preacher would come and preach for you. And so what I bring to my mind is when we had to go down into Arkansas, South African people down there, well, then we had to go down to that discrimination. You could just go to the back of the bus and sit down and like that. So we rode in, we got on to cross the line, or you had to go back, and then when you come up, you go to the front when you're coming north. So we got down, we got in Osceola, then we got on the local bus going to Kaiser. And so the bus was crowded, so we was standing up, my father, and so the other pastor, our pastor from Missouri, was a guy, he's an older man, and so he was standing. So it was a young white lady on the bus, and she said, Reverend, she said, you can sit down beside me. And so he sit down beside her. So we run it again. So when the bus driver come on, he looked back here, he said, look at here, Reverend. He said, you down in the state of Arkansas. The rules and regulations of the state of Arkansas, can't no Negro sit beside no white lady. And so he said, you got to get up now. So the young white lady said, no, Reverend. She said, you can stay there. She said, I get up and stand and you can have my seat. And that opened my eyes about the difference in people in there. And she stood up and let him ride in the seat till we got where we was going. So that was another experience that I learned, with understanding people. Oh, yes.
Good. And so when you got to Fresno, did you go to work right away, or what did you do once you got here?
No, when I got to Fresno, see, I finished high school when I was 16 years old, but my other brothers and sisters went to school out here, from that. So when it comes, see, my father, he was preaching, but he was worked like a farmer in there like that, and he always was self-employed. And so we come out here, he and I, not my sister, so we went out and we chopped cotton, and we picked cotton, picked grapes and like that. And I did that, and that's what he did too, but he did it too. Then finally, he did plumbing, and a lot of time he got a job there, and he worked up in the dams up in the mountains later on. But then we did that until we got going. But I couldn't get no job because I was too young. And then later on, when I started going to college, we lived on West Don in town, and Deacon Walker lived across the street from me there, and so and another lady named Cassie Turner, she owned the store down on the corner. And so she said, well, you can come down here and be a clerk in this store. And she said, well, I'll show you what to do. So me and her son, she trained us. And so I started working in her store. I was a cashier. And I did that, and then that helped me out when I was going to college, because she couldn't get no aid or nothing like that. But I'd get work, go to college in the daytime, and I would work there at that store. So I did that.
And then which college did you go to?
I went to City College.
City College.
At that time.
Mm-hmm. And you got your degree?
No, I didn't. I got enough courses, but I didn't go back to get the degree. I had to go to work. Now, when I was going, I took trigonometry, analytic trigonometry, and I took chemistry and all that, and I had an A in the math, and I had a B plus in chemistry and all that, and then I passed the deal to go to the schools at the time. I passed all the English classes, and I had the math to go. But see, we didn't have too much money, so I had to go to work. What the teacher at that time told me that chemistry, he said, if you come back, sir, I will make you assistant professor to train under me. But I couldn't go back, so I had to work and help the family at that time. And then later on, I took night courses from Fresno State and like that.
Okay, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me how you met your wife. Tell me how you met your wife.
Oh, how I met my wife?
Yeah.
When I met her, I was working at the county. I was driving an ambulance at that time. Then no black people drive no ambulance at that time, so I got that job. And then what thing got me was, she had some cousins, and an uncle lived in the town where I come from, but I didn't know it. And so when they come out, some of her cousins was here living in Fresno. And so I was working at the hospital, and so they told me, they said, you ought to come see my cousin. So you'd be really nice to you. I know you'd want to talk to her. And I was young. I said, well, I don't know. I may come out, like that. But I didn't go. And one day they was visiting the uncle in the hospital. And when I saw her, my eyes got real big. I just tell you like that. I said, that was the prettiest woman I ever seen in my life. I mean, she was really, really nice looking. And so, and I come back, he said, you coming down? I said, oh yeah, I'll be down pretty as soon as possible. So I made my way of coming down. And she lived in Carruthers at the time. And so I went down to Carruthers and I met them and met the family and the cousin, all the family. And I tell you, they were really some good looking folks, all the cousins, the uncles, and aunties and everything, and we was friendly. Yeah.
And so how long did you guys date before you got married?
We didn't date that long. Well, see, at the time, I was drafted to go in the service. And they sent my letter for to go in, but I wasn't married then, and so when I got married to her, then I told her, I said, well, I'm going to be drafted in service, and so when I got married to her, they called me down to the hall there, and I went out and they put my paperwork in, and I told them, well, I got my wife in, I'm married now, and so then they said, well, I don't know. He said, well, I think we can make the call. Said, then they go by the initials in your last name. And so I took all my physicals and everything, and I was in 1A, and I was supposed to go to Camp Polk, Louisiana. And so when I went in to everybody else, they pulled me out. And they said, well, since you married, we made the quota. So then that's the only reason I didn't go in. Because I was going to volunteer in time, but they wouldn't take nobody in the Navy and the Air Force at that time. And I told them I wasn't going in no Army, no Marines, like that. So that's what happened. And so that happened.
Okay, I'm going to stick with the wife a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So how long were you guys married and how many kids?
Let me see. We was married about around 56 to 7 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you tell the younger generations, that's a long time. How do you, in this day and age, people hop in and out of marriages like it's nothing. What do you say to keep a marriage strong and to keep it healthy and loving? What do you say to these young people when they're thinking about marriage today?
That's a great question. I can tell you about myself, like I told her, she was nice looking. But one thing about her, she was nice looking, but she had good personality. And she lived a saved life. And even though she was a nice looking lady, but she was real friendly. And she would talk to anybody. And she would try to help everybody. And she didn't put her looks over anybody. And that's one thing that caught my attention, and I was around the church, but I was not in the church. I like church, but I kind of like one foot kind of over there and one foot over here. So when I met her, she says, you got to put both feet in the church, with me. And so that was kind of, I listen. That's got an important story. And I would tell you, like when I was young, well, like my father, in the old days, when he said he was the boss of the house, and he just say, everybody be quiet, shut up, and do what I said, the women and all. So a little bit of that rubbed off on me. So when we first got married, I said, look, I call the shots in here. And she told me, said, who are you talking to? And I said, I'm talking to you. She said, let me get you straight. She said, my daddy, he's the one that helped me going. And let me tell you, if you don't boss me around, I'm going to tell you, you get that out of your head right now, And then she told me, that time when we met, well, I wasn't making too much money on the job. So she says, Now, when you get there and you can make the money and come back and support this house like you're supposed to, then you come up and talk to me then I'm going to say yes when you come at it. And so I said, well, all right then. So I started working and I started making more money. When I started making more money, I said, I'm making some money now. I said, now I'm going to come in here and do like the man's supposed to do. She said, oh, yes, you can. And then we started laughing about it, like that. And another thing, I'll just give you an example. When you're young, you're going to make mistakes. And a lot of times, you can get into a conversation at home and you can't get together. When I tell anybody, say, both of you can't be high. When one's high, one is going to have to be low. And you're going to have to bring it in together. And you don't think yourself higher than the lady, and the lady, your wife, don't think that she's higher than you. God put us both on the same plane. And we work together and do your job that way. And so when you're like that, so when I would get up, and she let me have it, and then I dropped down, I wouldn't say nothing. And then a lot of times we got down and we didn't talk. I said, well, I'm not talking now for a couple of weeks. And I just tell you this thing. And so I was going to work. And so the young lady at the bus stop, I know she's looking out that window, So I stopped and I said, you need a ride? She says, yeah. And so I took her, dropped off downtown. So I come back that evening, we hadn't been talking. She said, yeah, I said, we're going to talk this evening right now. So she said, you come on in here. And so I come in, she said, I saw what you did. And she said, I told her, I did that because I know you was looking. And then, and I didn't do it. She said, when you go back on that street, you better go out the other way. So I went out the other way. And then later on, we laughed about it. See, this is the thing. You can't hold things against each other. And you can come back when you can have, just be friendly. And you think about things and you laugh on it. And then sometime when she get me, I say, oh, you got me. And then she said, oh, I got you. And you have to be friendly. Another thing, you have to keep everything in your house. See, don't bring families in. Don't bring nobody out there. You work it and keep your stuff in-house. That's what you have to do. And your family come first. They come before your mother, your father, your sister, or brother. This is just your family is number one. You are both one. And you don't let nobody come between you and your family. And if you do that, you'll be all right. And another thing, put God in the front. Put God in the front. You put him in the front, and I go deeper than that. Me and her, we both, got in church and put God front. She was really now. Let's go stop there.
That's good. Very good. All right, so I'm going to talk about your kids a little bit. I don't know a lot. I just met two of your they're not children, but two of your kids, and I see that the things that's been instilled in them. How do you, and then this generation, it's so hard to get children invested in God and to get them to trust and believe in a God. So what advice would you give to parents now to draw your children into church and to draw them to God?
Now, when I started, I sung quartet for years, and I would be gone a lot. And then my wife would be there, with the kids. Sometimes we go together. And so she would be going to church in that other time, but I'd be going out of town. But when you're a man, you got to put God front. See, not like earlier, I wasn't quite there together. I'd be sending the boys to church. You don't send your kids to church. You bring your kids to church. And another thing, you have to live a saved life in front of your family. If you don't live a saved life in front of your family, you're not going to get them. They're not going to listen to you at all. And you have to have respect. They have to have respect for you. And another thing, I tell my sons, I told them, I said, number one, it's simple. I says, you go and at least finish high school. And don't go out here getting children on the outside. And I say, and get you a job if you can't get education. Learn how to do work, or learn how to work with your hands, or do a job and support your family. And then too, don't get into arguments in front of the kids. You go and talk to it, that you and them talk to it privately and iron things out. You don't do that out there. You keep out. You have to show them a good front in front of your kid because they are watching you. See, and that's one thing. And you come to church and you shouting, and then you're going home cussing or doing something. That's not going to work. And you can't make a kid do anything. And I tell you an example that since we're on this, when my kid, Michael, well, Rita's a good athlete too. She ran track and all that. All of them did. And Michael, when he's a football player, and see, you can't make a kid be saved. You can tell them, but you have to, and when you discipline them, you have to talk to them. You just said, don't do that. You got to explain why they should do that. And a lot of times I would take him around, and we go down on G Street, and I would show him. I say, you see the people out here, all them people weren't bad. I said, they come from homes. But they let the outside world get to the teaching, lead you from what you was taught. Say, and then another thing, when he played football, I told him, I said, get the book of Proverbs. I said, I can't be at no university with you. I said, you get that one. If you don't read the Bible or all the rest, just keep that with you. And read that, and that'll get a good thing and help you along the way. So he did, that's what I would tell him. Then I told him when he was playing football, I said, you're going to be around all the kids here, and I'm not here. I don't watch it. I'm going to leave it up to you. And so I said, when you ride the bus, I said, you know the cutting up in the back, don't sit in the back. And I said, if you sit in the front of the bus, they're going to call you square. I said, sit in the middle of the bus. And I said, you'll be all right. And so I sit at the middle of the bus. When they went down to play in San Bernardino, he just told me, he said, Dad, you know one thing? You was right. He said the other fellow was back there trying to shoot some dice, and the coach kicked him off the club. See, he made a decision not to go sit there. But you can't make them, and you got to talk to them. And don't cut them and push them down. Always uplift them. And when they do something good, admire them and tell them. And help them as best you can. I hope I'm not talking too long here.
No.
But then when he was in there, see, a lot of folks said, well, just do this and do that. Well, in my way of doing things, when I worked at the post office, they gave me, when I was working on my job, they said, we're not going to hire anybody else. And I was off Sunday, Monday. He said, you can get work every Monday and get double overtime, and you don't have to have no part-time job. He said, just do it as long as you want to. You pick the time and come in, how long you want to work, and you can go home when you want to. Then I was off Sunday and Monday. The holidays come on that Saturday. I get paid holiday pay. Then if I work Christmas, I get in double time and a half. Now the other people and the other folks in there didn't have that job. See, when you do right, see, the Lord will make a way for you. See, and I didn't have to go out, and I had the job. And the other guy said, well, how they doing it to him? Well, I come in and I come to work on time, did my work. So now I had money to help my family. So now what did I do? Me and my wife worked too. And when Michael got up, we bought him a brand new truck, paid cash for it. We let him know we appreciate what you're doing. See, you got to me, I would sacrifice my family before I would myself. And you can talk to him, and you got to show him. And you should have seen the face when he had that new truck. Say, you did good. We're going to show you we're behind you before. And I say, if you can't do that, do something for him that way. I put it that way.
Before I go down another path, you talked about being at the post office.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to the post office? And I know you have some things there that I want you to kind of talk about, some of the awards and accommodations that you got. How did you get into the post office?
Well, see, when I was working at the county, see, I was driving an ambulance, see, and at that job, when I had that job, I was the only black guy who ever drove an ambulance around here at that time. They weren't even down in LA in places. And the way I got that, have to go from there first. Where I got that job, you got to dress properly when you go for your job. And if you're going down there for a working job, don't come down there with a three-piece suit on, you know. When I went out and I put on a nice white shirt, some tan pants, and I had the shoes like you wear in college. When I put on those in one hand. At that time, I had a lot of hair on my head then, and so I put some pomade on there. I could slick it down, you know. And so I come in, and so when they come in, they say, oh, you really dress nice. And they would ask me, say, well, you want to work? I said, oh yeah, I can do it. See, another thing, you have to have confidence in yourself that you can do the job. And another thing, you have to prepare yourself to take tests. See, you take tests even if you can't pass the job. You can see how that they set the test up. You can see what the vocabulary is on there, and you can see how to read and define what you're reading. So I would do that, and I'd go out of town and take tests all over the place. So when then I was working there, I was working 16 hours a day. I drove in that ambulance and the thing. Daytime I come to the post office and worked at 12 o'clock at night and get off at 8:30. Or when I went in, I had took the test and passed it 3 times, and they didn't call me. So I was working there, and they had the boss. He was Eisendrag. He was a German, and he said. And then when I went to work, I was on time. Then I didn't. And whenever somebody tell me something to do, I kept me a little book. Then I would write down things, what you had to do, and or whatever. If it's a gear or something, I put down what you do over here and what time it does, and I kept that. So I didn't have to go back and ask you to repeat it again. So you got to do that. And when you learn that, see, and then I can go on and I watch and I ask somebody right now, show me what you're going on doing here. And I would learn things to do before you get there, see. And of course you didn't know. Well, anyway, so I worked there and I was on time. And so he asked me, he said, hey, did you take the test? And I said, yeah. I said, I took it 3 times. And they said I wasn't on the list. He says, by golly, he says, we'll see about that. You know, I didn't know what he was going to do. He said, I'll call down there for you. And the guy in the personnel office at that time, he wouldn't hire black folks at that time. And so, but this was the German. He said, I'm gonna call down there. So you're gonna get on. And so when I went back home, then I got a letter, and the letter come in. Said, come in for an interview. And I come in for the interview. Then they said, who you know? I put his name down on there. And then they come in, and that's the way I got hired. You know, see, just the thing, it was a white man that made a hire. But then the other thing, see, you can't go down there and somebody have to tell you something 10 times. You got to be able to catch on, and then be on time, and work. If the other guy's sitting around, you go to work, and then it'll make a way for you. And that's the way I got on.
So, being at the post office, what are some of the awards and recognitions that you got, that you received while you worked there? Share some of that with us.
Okay. Well, see, and another thing too. Now, I left this off. See, it's a lot of people take that test, and see, you could make 80 and you don't get called. You got to make in the 90s, and see if there was a veteran, they get 10 extra points, and you could sit there a long time and never get called. So what did I do? I made 98 on the test. See, that's the thing. So you got to study. Do you want to get on? So it's a lot of things go there. So when I went on, it's a lot. When you get in there, I ran machines and all that stuff. And then I was working at the opening unit. And when you come work at the opening unit, all the mail that come in had to go through me. I had a desk there, and at that time they had LSM machines, and I was seated to go there, and you had to have different color codes you had to use. At certain times, it's got to work as overnight mail around here. It's got to get out. And then the next time, 2-day delivery, 3-day delivery when you're working to get it out. And so when I worked and I had to handle the registered mail, that means it was expensive the money like that. And then when you sign that, you sign, the next man sign it, and yeah, that's the way to go down the line. So I was in charge of all of that when we do that. And so I worked good at it. Now this way, when you went to war, well, you had the whole, see, you didn't have the calculators like you have now. And they had the mail on the trucks and stuff, and the clerks worked by hand. And so they had to determine how much mail was in there, and then they know how much overtime they have to give. And so he had the bosses in it, but I had math, see, so I could figure. And another thing was Sister Elder Miller's wife. Her dad was a contractor when he was picking grapes. He had a deal, had a counter. And so I remember he had one. I said, how in the world he could remember that? He would walk and watch that counter when he walked, so because he wouldn't forget. So I had that counter. I just bought me one. And so when they went in, they had stacks of mail. Well, then the guys couldn't tell how much was in there. So the boss wanted to know, and they was messing up, and they wasn't having enough people to work, and just getting in trouble. And the head man was on them. So he said, mutually said, "When you go down here and count the flow for me," what the star like that. I said, okay. So I went out and I took one sack of mail, and they go by footage. Then I measured how much foot was in that sack. And then I could tell the half of sacks, I counted one sack. And then I would count all the sacks on the floor, and I would catch it like that. Then I would multiply the time, and I know what much footage in there. So I could go down the aisle, and I would go all over like that, and I count it like that, and I would count it, and I have it, and I give him a list. And then he would know how many people had to have there. And so when it got up, it worked out real good. He said, well, you just go down here, I'm going to have you doing that for me. And he was the head man, see. And he said, because these others is too dumb, so they can't do it. But now, see, you got to be smart till you're on the job. See, when you have your way of doing things, you don't go around there telling it to somebody else. Because when you go off from work, they go behind you and cut your throat, see, and get your job. So they was looking at me to try to see what I was doing, but that's all they could do was look, because I wasn't showing them. I'll show you how to get there, but I won't show that like that. And so then when I did that, then it saved the post office money. And so that's the way I got the reward. And I got these rewards there. And just, if you don't mind it, I won't go through all of them, but I had one here, and I just
we'd like to see a couple of them. So.
Okay. You want to look?
Yeah. Turn it to the camera.
Yeah.
Turn it toward me. There we go.
And it'll tell you, see, when I'm a fellow like this, I'm going to tell you how I am. I couldn't take too much orders off of nobody. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you that. And you couldn't come around and just bossing me around. And I'm going to tell you that way. When I'm around, you tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Now, if I'm in the church, you tell me what to do, I'll do it. But you come around here trying to boss like I'm 2 or 3 years old, we're going to get into trouble. I'll just leave it there. Mm-hmm. All right. And so that's the way I got the rewards. And I got special achievement award. And then, see, I got recognized here. I didn't know it. And they said it from the U.S. House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. And so they said this at that time. I got a reward from the congressman. And they put it up in Washington, D.C., what I was doing in Fresno. Wow. So I just brought it along.
Pull that one up and look and point it toward me. Okay.
That all right?
Good. And then I want to see the big one.
You want to see the big one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that all right?
That's all right. All right, look at that.
Now I had another one.
Yes. Wow. Okay. All right.
And then I had another one from there.
Good. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so I want to ask you a couple of different types of questions right now. So what experiences do you think you went through, if you could share a few, that drew you to the Lord? What experience did you go through that caused you to draw close to God?
What experience I went through where?
What experiences happened in your life that you feel drew you to God?
Uh, the thing that happened in my life that drew me to God, I was working and I was making money, and you know, really, so you can be around the church, and you like church, but you're still not in it 100%. You're not a bad person.
Right.
And what happened was, a lot of when I was a young kid, before I come back, I go back to Missouri, and in the church I have a pastor. His name was Doc Wright, and he loved young folks. Our pastor, and he would brag on his young folks anywhere that he went. And when I was singing quartet, we started singing in the church, and we used to go down and practice on the church mother's porch. In the summer we get in there, and all the people in the neighborhood, the kids in the neighborhood would go and listen at us while we practiced. And the church mother would just smile when we were singing on her porch. And they had them, I'll never forget the name, Elder D.Z. Butler and Sister Pearl Butler and Brother C.Q. Mack. They loved the young folks in the church. And when they come, all the young people would be in Sunday school because we had an inspiring teacher. And all the young folks would come to RPWW was full because we had a really inspiring elder and his wife. And this is what he did. We was young, man. He said, you guys sang real good. He said, he was a mechanic. He says, I'm going to fix this car up. And he said, and I'm going to let you guys, he said one of them could drive. He said, now, when you go around, when you get out of church, so you can go visit your girlfriends and like that, and visit like it in the community, but you be back to church on time for YPWW. And he put the gas in there for us. And we would go around, you know, just friendly, and we'd visit around and go in, and we would be right back on time for YPWW. So they wouldn't make an extra effort for you. And even, see, when he did that, they worked in Sunday school. You know, so they went out of the way. See, a lot of people go to church, and they said, this is the church of later on. No. It's the church now. And then you want to give them some incentives. Now this man did that in that day and time. And the church was full of young folks because they showed the effort and they would raise things to help them and put things on for them. And they would always encourage them and not cut them down. And I'll never forget that. And then when we got up, we could sing too. I never forget it. We went to the convocations in Charleston, Missouri. And I'm gonna tell you, we sung that night. And when we sung down, they was in the cafeteria. They come out the cafeteria shouting. So we could sing. And the pastor said, "Oh, my boys was all right." You know, just the encouragement. That what started me going to church. You know, and it showed the interest. I feel like it showed the interest in it.
So, outside of that, was there anyone else that inspired you? Was there someone really, really special that inspired you to just really, really to keep this journey going?
I wouldn't put it on any one person, but I put it this way. Now, when I got old, I come back. When I came to Fresno Temple here, well, I sung, you know, stuff around. I sung Blind Boys and all that, you know, I've been around. Sung Macedonia, San Francisco, St. Paul, Sacramento, all these big places I've been around groups. But when I come here, Elder Walker, he was going back to Oklahoma. And so I come in, what started me, I started coming to Sunday school. Well, I could teach Sunday school, but I would sit down on my deal. I wouldn't do nothing. I just come in and look and watch. And so later on, well, they come in that morning, and he was gone, and there wasn't nobody doing to take over. And so I had been there. So I come in and I went on working in the Sunday school, just filling in because there wasn't nobody there. Well, then no, I didn't tell him I could sing or nothing. And so when I went to singing, well, I started singing that morning. So I'm going to tell you, it was the mothers in the church. I'm going to tell you that. And the mothers got on me. And they told me, say, you sitting up here, and then Jonathan's grandmother, Mother Walker, because I call her Sister Carrie Walker, Mother Sister Johnny Brown, Sister Seth, and the mother's Sister Town, there's the other kin there, Sister Miller and all of them. And they got me around, them mothers got on me. And they told me, say, you gonna come up here, you're gonna move up here, you can move up. You're too good to go to hell like that. But they was nice about it, was on me. And so I would start going, and then I went to slacking back off. And they come to my house at me, and they said, where you at? They would come get you then. And I ran to the bathroom. I didn't want to get on them. But they said, we ain't gonna give up on you. And they got on me. And so when I started singing in Sunday school. And then they said, I said, well, that's as far as I want to go. They said, no. She said, you sing in Sunday school, so you coming up on the main deal upstairs. So you singing in here, so you gonna sing up there too. Man, they got on me. And they prayed with me. And I'm gonna tell you, they were some sincere saints. And I mean, it got me. Now, I'll tell you this too. I don't get, and then I'll tell them, see, my wife, she was always solid in church more than I was. And, when you're young, you'll be trying to, you're acting, putting your foot in your wing, And Bishop Mason come, see, I live right 2 doors from the church. And Bishop Mason come to town, but I didn't know who he was. And the pastor's house was behind the church. And so Bishop Mason used to walk around the block every morning. Then my daughter Rita and the other daughter, they was young kids. And and my wife, I didn't know it, she had